She has some very interesting things to say with us. But first of all, I'm really excited about this conversation. Amanda, please introduce yourself.
Sure. So my name is Amanda Kurd. I am the owner of Anchor to Life Pilates and Nutrition. A little bit of background about me. I have been a physical therapist, seems hard to believe, for over 25 years. I'm dating myself a little bit. That being said, I've worked entirely in the pediatric realm. I started to get a little bit burned out with that. I ended up in the Pilates space through continuing education to maintain my physical therapy licensure. I fell in love with it. I found my passion, pursued getting trained. I have been a comprehensively trained Pilates instructor for about 5 years. And then in addition to that, I have got a nutrition certification, and I just recently received my menopause certification from Girls Gone Strong, because I don't know about you, Claire, but I got that primarily because guess what? My sleep started to go to crap. My started to get a little bit of hot flashes here and there. I look like I have just this glow it's a natural glow. It's not a blush glow. And it just comes on at the most inopportune times. And so I proceeded to get into this menopause space to kind of try and figure that out. And I know I'm not the only one out there that's going through all of this, and just how Pilates can kind of help with that transition.
Okay, so you are talking my language. I definitely can tell as I'm in my 40s that these things are starting to happen to me. The sleep is not good, and there are so many other small things that I wouldn't like to say are going on, but they're all part of menopause, and it has only come to light recently. So for women, there is this huge responsibility that still hasn't shifted in society, where they are still mainly responsible for the household as well as professional jobs. And then menopause to the mix, and feeling a sense of being burnt out and needing some guidance, because essentially women are guiding everybody in the household, in their professional careers. And then this happens. And so maybe to help women to understand, can you explain some of the symptoms that people might be seeing in menopause that they are pretending are not really happening, but that they are actually a part of real life?
Right. And I think most people out there, when they think of menopause, they think of hot flashes. They think of that. And yes, that is extremely uncomfortable. But the things that maybe you don't know about, that aren't talked as much about, are things such as your stress management starts to go down, especially as we enter into that later stage of life. We've got kids maybe leaving the home. That's a stressful event. We may end up caring for aging parents. That's a stressful event. In addition, if you're like you or me, running a business, or you work in a high powered job, you're expected to do all of those things, maybe also get food on the table or be responsible for the house. And all of those things start to pile up. And then you add in the hormones, and those also compound by affecting things such as sleep. The sleep can affect your mental clarity. So you may have heard about that brain fog piece. You don't recover from activity as well. So you may have gone out and, you used to stay up until 10, 11 o'clock at night. And then the next day you would just wake up and you would be fine. And nowadays it's like, oh, I can't do that anymore. My body doesn't respond quite the same way as it did. And it can be extremely frustrating. And the fact that you want to be able to do the things that you used to, and now you can't.
That, just to recap, so for women who are listening in or who possibly see this later on, number one, sleep starts to go. There are hot flushes, there are huge responsibilities, and with that, a woman who's usually used to managing her stress is now feeling burned out because she has the added problem of stress being harder to manage, minus the sleep, plus the hot flushes and that brain fog, being unable to think clearly. Now, we might say these are symptoms of burnout or exhaustion or stress, but really, when there's a change in your own biological system, where you're not recovering from activity as easily, where you don't feel as strong or as inclined to exercise. So when you talk about these symptoms and how that really transfers into people who are in leadership positions or women in a highly driven, like, professional career, it kind of becomes more apparent. So can you tell us a little bit about what you do and how it helps to alleviate some of those physical manifestations of menopause?
Right, absolutely. With the menopause transition and just age in general, is that you women especially start to lose their muscle mass. And as you lose your muscle mass, you lose your strength, you lose your function. So it may be harder. A lot of clients I work with, they have a really hard time getting up off of the floor. That is one of the big functional things that I look at when I work with clients is, can you still get up off of the floor? You need to be able to say, pick up your grandkids or be able to go and pick up a heavy box off of the floor. And as we start to lose our muscle strength, that function starts to go. Along with that decrease in muscle mass, that has less pull on your bones, which leads to possible osteoporosis, which is also impacted by our hormones because estrogen has a protective effect on our bones. And as we start to go through menopause, we lose that protective effect and our bones become more brittle, which can lead to postural changes. It can lead to fractures. It can lead to falls. Falls are also caused by that decrease in muscle mass activation. So those are the part where I use Pilates and my expertise and background of movement analysis and function to make your life a little bit easier and make sure that we can ward some of those changes off and keep kicking them down the road and hopefully so that they don't come back.
Can you tell us three of the main benefits of taking Pilates for stress, for burnout, and for menopausal symptoms?
Absolutely. So for me, and I'll go from more of a personal perspective on this. So I'm a business owner. You're a business owner. The stress rises high. And one of the biggest draws of Pilates for me is being able to forget those stressors for a while,
Mm-hmm.
being able to be present in my mind and my body. And I will tell you, I get you on some challenging equipment. You're going to forget about that board meeting that's coming up or the having to pick up the kids later. All of that stuff starts to go away because you're concentrating so much. Can I do this? And which you can. But I make everything approachable so that you can gain your strength, gain your balance, gain your posture. And then by helping lower that stress level, that in and of itself, along with the activity, can help lead to that better sleep. Because you start to, stress is one of those things that it's like being on a hamster wheel. So you start to have that stressor and you're thinking about it. And then you can't sleep well. And then because you don't sleep well, you're more stressed out. And it just vicious circles. So if we can break some of that circle through movement, and there's a lot of research out there about movement, I use the Pilates as that movement to help increase your strength, increase your balance, increase your posture / alignment, and help lower that stress level. I use a lot of breath work within Pilates. And the other thing that we don't like to touch on is about the pelvic floor. We don't like to talk about incontinence. It's kind of that, I don't want to talk about it, but that's another thing that is a symptom of menopause is that loss of pelvic floor control, which can involve urinary leaks. And that's an important thing to bring out. And that's something I work with all of my clients.
Fantastic. Now, I have experience of Pilates and I know how excellent it is for, muscle mass, developing your bone density. They are two of the biggest symptoms of menopause. And then you have the stress. And women have a natural tendency. We are natural caretakers. We are biologically
Absolutely.
programmed to do that. So when you say breath work, decrease my stress, increase my bone density, my muscle mass, it sounds like you're kind of habit stacking. You're getting a lot of things done in one session. And what I also am hearing is that, women have a lot to think about. So when they come into a class, a Pilates class, or any kind of strength building class, the decision making fatigue disappears because they are present at that time.
Absolutely.
Then you mentioned posture. Now, I have a lot of friends who did Irish dancing, who danced in river dance, and you can tell their posture is really good, the shoulders are back and down. Can you lean into that a little bit? Let's talk posture. Why is it such a big deal in both health and how we show up at work?
Absolutely. So this is a passion of mine. And since COVID and all of the virtual coming about, everybody is starting to kind of shrink. They're in their chairs all day. They're not moving as much. Sitting, Brent Anderson, who is a PT, calls sitting as the new smoking. It's just our lack of movement is huge. And our movement, if you think about the tribal women in Africa that are holding those huge stacks on their head, the reason they can hold those stacks is because their spine is in alignment. Our spine is designed to carry load. But guess what? When you start getting here, gravity starts pulling here. So the
Mm.
more you're out of alignment, the more over time, and it's an insidious process. It
Mhm.
happens very slowly. The reason why I got into Pilates, my mom is that person. She is hunched
Okay.
over with the head forward. And again,
But
it happens
let
slowly
me
over
show you,
time.
Amanda, just to give people an example of the reality. So this is my phone. We all do this. So if I hold my phone here, this is the way my head is faced all the time,
Hmm.
looking down
Yep,
at my phone. And I can
absolutely.
even attest to changing from working in education, moving, facilitating, walking around a room to sitting at my desk, online coaching. There's a very big difference in my posture and also
Hmm.
the amount of steps I take on a daily basis. So what you're saying is by getting into a Pilates class, it can realign the new smoking, as you called it, which is sitting. And can you tie in for us how Pilates calms the nervous system? And, I suppose I want to really close off the posture with the greatest benefits of Pilates. And then let's move into sleep and stress. But let's first of all finish off what is it that Pilates brings to posture?
Right. So when you are working with me, I am looking constantly at your posture. So I have a lot of people that have that forward head posture. So guess what? We work a ton of extension work. I work a ton of opening through the chest, getting the arms back, opening all of this up, finding ways to get our balance so that we're seated correctly. I can't tell you how many clients I work with that are at a desk job. I'm like, send me a picture of how you are sitting at your desk, and I'm going to give you tools to be able to sit upright. I also suggest set your timer for every 20 to 30 minutes, get up and go walk around. If
Oh,
you're in an off.
I just heard a coaching thing there, the Pomodoro technique. Set the timer 25 minutes, take a 5-minute walk around. It also increases your steps. And we also forget we're probably sitting at a desk from 6 to 8 hours a day, Amanda. So a huge little tactic here is set a focus block on your computer to remind you to stand up because sometimes
Absolutely.
we get in the flow. I know there's standing desks and all that, but for the majority of people, there isn't that kind of insight.
Mhm.
Simply setting a timer is a really good one. Okay.
And no one will question you about having to go to the bathroom. So I
Exactly.
say, you have to go to the bathroom, take the long way around.
Yeah. Simple tactics. Park your car further away from the office door.
Hmm.
That movement, as you say, is so important. Okay, you mentioned earlier that Pilates helps hugely with sleep and nervous system regulation. How does that?
Right. So I use again a lot of breath work within Pilates. Finding that, a lot of times too, people are in pain. And when you're in pain, you also don't sleep as well. And breath is something you have with you wherever you go. So, one simple technique is you breathe in for 4, you hold for 4, you exhale for 8, and that can help just tamp down your nervous system. So, you have something called the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic is your fight or flight. So a bear is attacking you. That is an absolute, we need that for when we are being chased by a bear. I don't know how many of you are chased by bears. I'm not. But in everyday life, we're now our nervous systems are starting to recognize things as bears that aren't bears. So if we
Mhm.
can start to calm that nervous system down into the parasympathetic, which is your rest, digest, we can do
Mhm.
that through breath. We can do it through intentional movement with breath work. So that's a large piece of Pilates and finding that stress reduction. If we can start to reduce the stress or interrupt that stress cycle, especially as you're going to sleep and finding breath work, thinking, oh, this worked for me in Pilates. Let me try this prior to going to bed, that may help with your sleep. In addition to just if you're a sedentary person and you're now starting to move more, just that activity itself is going
Mhm.
to help with the sleep piece.
Amanda, you mentioned getting chased by bears. Nobody really, like very random, 1 in a million, 1 in 5 million maybe get chased by a bear.
Mhm.
Tell us some of the current chased by bears things that you're seeing with people that are equivalent to the fight or flight. So, what kind of prompts fight or flight to happen to people?
As far as what they deem as a bear.
Yeah, in
Okay.
modern terms, like what happens on a daily basis to a woman who has a busy professional life, she's a highly driven person and she's got a family to take care of and a home to
Mhm.
take care of. which is still, by the way, over 60% of women, or maybe even up to 70% of women who are professionals.
Exactly. So I'll give you a work scenario, I'll give you a home-based scenario. So work scenario, your boss or an employee sends you a text. This is happening. I need you to fix it now. Well, that's a bear. Does it actually need to be fixed now? So a lot of times I'll use through one of my coaching seminars is you have a crisis scale and really starting to look at what is truly a crisis and what isn't, because a lot of times we tend to catastrophize what we're doing. So if we can start bringing that back down, I'm like, okay, is it really a 10 out of 10? And we'll kind of work through that in a Pilates session. And they're like, well, I did this. And I'm like, okay, let's bring this back down. In a home situation, the kid's like, I forgot my homework. Can you bring it to me? Okay. Putting that on them, it makes it a lot of times the mom will internalize that. They'll say, nope, it's my responsibility. I've got to do it. When really we need to shift that over. Same thing, aging parent. I need you to go get this. You did this wrong. Well, we internalize all that and we catastrophize it, and that becomes our bear. And then we kind of stick on that. And so letting some of those responsibilities go of knowing what is truly under your control and how you react to it is one of the biggest pieces.
Okay, so what I'm hearing there is reflect on the situation as quickly as you can. Is it a 10 bear or is it a 1, 2, 3? I can sort it out. Create a boundary so that you don't internalize everybody else's wishes. So this translates hugely to coaching and learning
Absolutely.
how to create those boundaries, because sometimes people just don't even know how to create the boundaries. But what I'm hearing is that by reflecting and breathing through Pilates, not only are you getting the physical benefits, it's like it's slow enough to allow you to think and reflect, but powerful enough to build resistance training, to build strength, to build bone density. So it's like, again, habit stacking, more than just one way of, there's just many benefits to one activity. Okay.
Absolutely.
Can you give us an example of how Pilates has helped women navigate this phase? So let's go back to the menopause for a minute. How has Pilates, could you share with people some examples of how Pilates has helped women, especially those driven women who have high stress, to overcome menopausal symptoms more powerfully?
Sure. So, couple different scenarios. I'll use myself as an example first. Recently became a business owner. Having to tackle all of the things on social media, all of the back end business. On top of that, my sleep was being deprived because of just the hormonal shifts. In addition, thinking your brain starts to at 3 a.m. starts to go, oh, I need to get this done. Oh, I need to get this done. Oh, I need to get this done. And then putting it into a Pilates practice and starting to just realize I need to let some of that go. I don't need to have all of that on my plate. And then being able to move through it allows me to forget my stresses for a little bit. And that is the biggest, probably my addiction to Pilates. That's where it comes from, is just the freedom of movement and then the freedom of being boxed in my brain. Putting on some good tunes and just moving and knowing that you have confidence and power in your body there's no feeling like it, of knowing you're able to do this. And it doesn't have to be something crazy hard. Everybody thinks that Pilates is this crazy stuff and you have to be thin and you have to be this and that. And it's not at all. It is meant to be accessible for everybody. And that is something I'm truly, truly passionate about. Is that Pilates, I know we're talking menopause, but I have men that do Pilates as well. It's not just this certain little box and you have to look like this to do that. Other clients, that are going through that menopause, or maybe a little bit on the other side, and they're suffering through that muscle loss. They're losing that function of being able to stand up on their own from the floor. And I had a woman that couldn't. When she first started to see me, she couldn't get up off of the floor without using her hands or putting her hands on something. And guess what? Now she can. And she is very empowered by that.
And Amanda, I think that's really important, to make it relatable, to make it to a real life scenario, because it's not just grandparents who are going through that. I mean, I'm in my 40s. I can definitely attest to symptoms, but that power you talk about from having your own strength and retaining and maintaining your strength, it's absolutely paramount to your confidence. I mean, I could 6 and 8. I have a friend who went through menopause at 36 and she didn't know it.
Absolutely.
So, like, it's not like for grandparents. I really want to iterate that, people can go through stress at any time in life. And menopause can start, and perimenopause can start very, very young. And we talked about things to watch for is changes in your cycle, changes in sleep, mind racing, mind fog, inability to cope with stress. You might mistake some of those for general high stress and anxiety, but women know their own body. They have this subconscious notion. Women do certainly know their own bodies. So I think it's just important to tell people if you're feeling depleted, but you don't know where to start, here is a point. Before I ask you my next question, though, I want to mention this as somebody who likes to go to classes. I was actually at a Pilates class yesterday and a strength class today because it's become my focus. But when women go to a class, I really do think that part of it is because they're so exhausted making decisions and having to drive through that actually taking a communal class is good for community, it's good for connection, and it's good to not have to think, what should I do in the gym? Somebody is telling me what to do in a class. I don't have to think. And that's one of
Absolutely.
those things I find really relieving about going to classes like that. But now, if a woman is feeling depleted, but doesn't even know where to start, Amanda, with menopause and with high stress, I know from a coaching perspective that half the time the hardest part is actually committing to making a change, especially as we move on in life. So what would you say? What would you tell that woman who's having menopausal symptoms, who feels that she doesn't have her strength or her resistance in her nervous system, who's feeling stressed? From a physical perspective, what can they do?
So, from a physical perspective, first, what I would say is if you're questioning if you're having perimenopausal symptoms or you're starting, have an open conversation with your doctor. That is piece number one. If they are not willing to listen to you, go find someone who is. So, that's one of the things I pride myself on is that I have a network of people that I can refer to, functional medicine doctors. So if you're questioning where you're at, you can get labs drawn. They're not an absolute, a definitive, but they can at least start to point you in the right direction, especially if you're starting to experience some of those hot flashes, flushes, or you're starting to experience some of that brain fatigue. Having a good set of lab works done by a doctor that knows how to read them is key.
Okay, and I have a question for you here on the lab and medics. What if a medical person shuts you down saying, oh, you're too young, or your cycle hasn't changed enough, or yeah, you might be just tired and stressed. I think it's just stress. So if your doctor tells you that and they take the bloods and the bloods just look fine, is that enough for a woman who's really convinced that there's something more going on?
I highly, highly suggest if you have the means, and this is not necessarily the easiest option, but if you have the means, I would suggest seeking out a functional medicine doctor that specializes and is trained to look at these labs in a little bit of a different way. And I'll give you my own personal example. I went to my primary care. She's like, nope, everything looks fine. I'm like, yeah, things are not feeling the way they should. I went out, sought out a functional medicine doctor. She drew labs that were different than what there were certain markers that she was looking for. And lo and behold, and I'm not saying this is correct for everyone, but I was put on hormone replacement. And it has helped my sleep immensely. Immensely, because I was getting about 5 hours of sleep and now I'm getting about 7 to 7.5. That makes a huge difference. Sleep's where we recover. It's where our brains, the central or cerebral spinal fluid, which is the fluid that floats around our brains and in our spinal cords. That's during deep, deep sleep is when all of that stuff gets recirculated and it allows our brains to reset to be able to function the next day. And if you're not getting that, it can have a drastic effect on your day.
So I would say to people, including myself included, if you've gone to your practitioner and they've said, no, it's just this or it's just that, trust your gut. Like it's like in coaching, the answers are inside. They just need to be brought out by the correct practitioner. So if you think that, the medical route is not the way, seek out someone else like a functional or a gynecologist. I do think second opinions are always worth it.
Absolutely.
Either clarifies this is definitely not it, or no, there is something going on. So Amanda, if people want to take on the physical route of building their strength, their resilience, reducing stress, becoming reflective, increasing bone density, where can they reach you? And I believe you have a little giveaway to share with everyone.
I do. So you can find me at www.anchortolife.com. You can also reach out to me. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram, Amanda_Anchor to Life. I'm also on Facebook. I've got a Facebook group by the same title. So look up Anchor to Life. You will most likely find me. And then my special gift to you is that I have a 10 minutes a day Pilates primer. It is meant for anyone. So I work with a lot of clients that already have osteoporosis or they have spinal stenosis. This is good for everyone. Brand new to Pilates, never exercised a day in your life. This is accessible for you. It's 10 minutes a day. Wow. Completely free. It works. I cover a little bit of educational stuff, but it's a great primer to Pilates or just movement in general.
So you heard it, folks. If you want to try, Amanda's actually offering a 10-minute session for 10 days to you, and you can reach Amanda via Anchor to Life, or she's going to share the details with me and I can give them out on all of my platforms as well. Amanda, thank you so very much for sharing all of that information with you. I do think that people love to be educated a little before they dip their toe. So it's always nice to hear for, the newbies coming into perimenopause and menopause before experienced stress and anxiety before, how Pilates can help. We thank you for joining us. We're really grateful. We hope you found it educational. Amanda, have you any closing thoughts?
I will just end kind of with my tagline, which is, I believe in thriving, not just surviving. I use Pilates. I use every tool in my toolbox to do that for you. And it's just something I'm passionate about. I want everybody to live until they're 90 and on their own 2 feet and not in a wheelchair and not using a walker and exploring their world and living life.
I want to live till I'm 110, so I'm definitely trying out the 10-day primer. Amanda, thank you so much. Stay with me for a minute. And thanks to everybody who has paid attention. Please let us know in the comments if you found this helpful or you'd like any further information from me or Amanda. Anything that helps you to get 1% better every single day is always worth giving a go for 10 minutes for 10 days. Thanks a million, everybody, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Stay with. It's saying 99%. Amanda.